पुनरपि स्वागतं प्रियमित्राणि। तर्हि गतवर्गे भवन्तः धातूनां गणानां परिचयं प्राप्तवन्तः। तत्र केवलं दशगणेषु पञ्चगणानाम् अध्ययनस्य समयः आसीत्, किन्तु अहम् आशां करोमि यत् गणपरिचयं प्राप्य तेषां विकरणप्रत्ययानां परिचयं प्राप्य इदानीं यदा धातुं पश्यन्ति तर्हि इतोपि आत्मविश्वासः अस्ति यत् आम् एतद्विषये अहं किञ्चित् जानामि। मुख्यमस्ति यत् किञ्चित् अभ्यासं कुर्वन्तु, कथनेन तस्य युक्तेः लाजिक् बोधः अवश्यं भविष्यति. So namaste and very warm welcome again to all of you. In our previous class we looked at the different verb groups, and I tried to introduce you to, we were able to do about 1 to 5 basically, and I tried to introduce you there to the the suffixes that are specific to that particular group. And I'm sincerely hoping that now when you're dealing with the verbs, you're feeling a little more confident about how these verbs are formed. But what is most important, of course, is that you're able to practice, you're able to use it. The more you use it, the more you will be confident about the logic, the inherent logic of these different verb forms. Astu, tari abhyasam kurvantu, tasya tu anya margah nasti eva. Tari idanim asmin varge we will look at module 5, which is again the revision of the Dhatu Rupani and an introduction to the Karmavachyam, and lecture 14 is going to be on understanding the 10 ganas and part 2 of that process. So in this particular lecture we'll be looking again very briefly at the revision of the building blocks of a sentence, some general information about the dhatus as we've seen, introduction to the 10 gunas with the characteristics, and we'll practice the conjugations in the Vartamana Kala and the Bhavishya Kala for the 10 groups, for the last groups which are from 6 to 10, a conversation for building vocabulary and application of the points learnt, and then we'll have a few more verses on the concept of Guru Shushrusha, and to close we'll have a few quotes by Swami Vivekananda on the same value. So here we have focus on the 10 ganas, as you can see here. Again, in the context of a specific example. The facts about the dhatus, as you've seen, there are 2000, of which only about 800 are used. What is relevant for us when you encounter a dhatu in terms of the coding of that particular verb is to recognize that it has 3 parts. The first part is the root form, the second part is the specific suffix, the vikarana pratyayaha that is added to it, which will determine which group it belongs to, and if you know how that group belongs, it will enable you to conjugate your verbs even if it is a new verb. And then the ending has to be the tinganta, which will tell you the tense or the mood, which person and which number, to give you the final form. And the verbs can have several meanings, as we've seen already in our previous lecture, where a verb could belong to 2 different groups and they would have different implications. And the fact is that they can also be conjugated in either the Parasmaipadi or the Atmanepadi or in both. So Gananam Parichaya Eshaha Shlokaha Uta Karika Asti. Etad Mukhastam Kartum Prayatnam Kurvantu Sahajam Bhavati Anantaram Smaranartham. Tari Bhuadyadadi. So bhu adi, so bhuadi, at adadi, so at ad adi becomes adadi, and it's a dirgha because it is 2 verbs together, so it's a dvivachanam there. Juhotyadihi visarga, that repha is the visarga sandhi there. Devadi swadi revacha. Do the visarga sandhi for me. Swadihi evacha. Uttamam. Tudadishcha. Break it up. Tudadihi cha uttamam. Rudhadishcha. What will happen? Rudhadihi cha uttamam. Tanakriyadichuradayaha uttamam. So we've got the bhuadi ganaha, adadi ganaha, juhotyadi ganaha, huadi ganaha. We've seen why. Divardi ganaha, swadi ganaha. Then Tudadigana, these are the next 5 that we'll be looking at today. The Tudadigana, the Rudhadigana, Tanadigana, Kriyadigana, and Churadigana. I'd also like to mention that you also have the verb Rud, to cry, but Rudhadi. So make sure that you're doing your Mahapranas correctly, because that can really change. Make sure you're doing your Mahapranas correctly, and you're also doing the length of the vowel correctly. Etena sarvena etat sarvam api tatra bhedam janayati, artha bhedam janayati yadi shuddham nasti. So please ensure that you're pronouncing it as precisely as possible. Agre Tudadi Ganaha Shashtaha Ganaha asti, or the 6th group, and I'll be introducing you to the conjugation of the verbs Tud, which means to bruise, and Mil, to meet, in the Vartamana Kala and the Bhavishya Kala. So the Tudadi Gana, which is the Shashta Gana, we are going to be focusing on the Tud Dhatu in the Parasmai Padi here. So Tud, you see it is Tudang, and it is Vyathane, to hurt, to bruise. The Vikarana Pratyaya is Sh. And as we are already familiar with this, you see that here you come to Tudati. So Tud plus Sh plus Tip. And with the particular change here, you see again the Lashakvatadhite, we have seen that earlier. So the Sh drops with the Tasya Lopaha, and then moving on, you get the Tudati. Astu agre gachama. Militva vadama. So Tudati, Tudattaha, Tudanti, Tudasi, Tudathaha, Tudatha, Tudami, Tudavaha, Tudamaha. The ideal for this verb, which means to bruise, is to say na Tudati, na Tudataha, na Tudanti, and especially with na Tudami, so you don't bruise anybody or anything. So the na is a helpful addition, the negation of this particular verb. Then Bhavishya Kale kim bhavati? Totsyati. So if the more you do these verbs, you'll start getting a feel of what the vowel of the root verb can do in the future. Okay. So Totsyataha, Totsyanti, Totsyasi, Totsyathaha, Totsyatha, Totsyami, Totsyavaha, Totsyamaha. Astu spashtamasti atra. Tari atra I'm wondering if you can make a sentence here. That's why I'm just taking a small pause. So if you say I will not hurt the boy, how will you say that? I will not hurt the boy. So aham will not. So will not hurt. In fact, together na totsyami, the boy. Balam. Aham balam na totsyami. I am not hurting. Aham balam na tudami. Alright. We too are not hurting. Avam balam na tudavaha. Bhavishya Kale avam balam na totsyavaha. Uttamam. Astu. Let's look at the other verbs here. So tud becomes tudati, ish becomes ichhati, prich becomes prichhati, sprish becomes prishati, mir becomes mriyate. And then you've got and that's in the Atmanepadi, and then it has similarities to the Bhuadigana, as you can see here. So we've got pat, which becomes patati, and then you've got in the Atmanepadi, vrit becomes vartate, vand becomes vandate. So there is a similarity because of the sh, which is the Vikarana Pratyaya, and there is a remaining a. So in the Prathama Gana, you had shap, which also got reduced to an a. But in this case, so we've got both the forms on this table here, and let's try and do first the Parasmapadi, Anantaram Atmanepadim vayam militva eva vadama. Astu tari milati milataha milanti, milasi milathaha milatha, milami milavaha milamaha. Those of you who are very confident, you can close your eyes and just say. So when I invite you, you close your eyes and say, okay, let me see if I get the table right. And then you open your eyes and you see whether you've got it right. Or as I'm saying it along, see if you're confident to say it with your eyes closed. That is another fun game that we can play. Astu. Now the Atmanepadam, let me see how confident you are. Tari netre nimilya prayatnam kurvantu yadi shaknuvanti vanava. Kim bhavati? Milate, milete, milante, milase, milethe, miladhve, mile, milavahe, milamahe. Astu. Idanim bhavishya kale kim bhavati? नेत्रे निमील्य कुर्वन्तु. So close your eyes and try that. मेलिष्यति, मेलिष्यतः, मेलिष्यन्ति, मेलिष्यतः, मेलिष्यसि. Again. मेलिष्यसि, मेलिष्यथः, मेलिष्यथ, मेलिष्यामि, मेलिष्यावः, मेलिष्यामः. भविष्यकाले किं भवति? आत्मनेपद्यां. तर्हि मेलिष्यते, मेलिष्येते, मेलिष्यन्ते, मेलिष्यसे, मेलिष्येथे, मेलिष्यध्वे, मेलिष्ये, मेलिष्यावहे, मेलिष्यामहे. अस्तु. So what is always helpful to remember is the pattern similarity between these verb conjugations also. अस्तु. अग्रे गच्छामः. समानमेव अन्यप्रकारेण अत्र दर्शितमस्ति. Just so that you can do a comparative study. So I've tried giving you visual impacts, of these different forms that are there. So let's look at some other verbs here in this group. We've got sprish, to touch, and now I invite you, which you should have done earlier on also, but you can also go back and do this game. So try and see if you can show actions to represent them. Okay. So sprish, sprishati, lik, likhati, ish, ichhati, prich, prichhati, vish, vishati, srij, srijati, sput, sputati, laj, lajjate, mri, mriyate, and then mil, milati or milate, which means fortunately the same thing here. Agami ganaha kaha asti? Rudhadi ganaha. Saptamaha ganaha asti, and atra we'll look at the conjugation of the verbs rudh and bhuj. So rudh to cover and bhuj to protect in the vartamana kala, latlakara, and the bhavishya kala, the litlakara. Tari rudhadi ganaha, tatra rudh to cover iti tasya rupam pashyama parasmai padyam. So as you can say, rudhiram. So rudhir avarane. Tatra vikarana pratyayah shnam asti. Okay. So you know all of that, and atra you've got the shnam. You cut off the sh with and the makara, and you are left with the na there. You see, and then it becomes the ti becomes the dhi because of the dha that is there before that. So it becomes runadhi. Okay, in the prathama purusha vartamana kala ekavachanam. So let's do the conjugation of this together. We've got runadhi, rundha. You notice it's not runad, rundha, it's rundha. And there are all Panini's niyamas to tell kimartham na bhavatiti. And then rundha. Ucharane, it's not very, very evident, but there is a double dadha there if you can do it. And then rundhanti, runatsi, rundha, 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 runadmi, rundhvah, rundhmaha. I really invite you to say these verbs. You will exercise and discover such parts of your mouth that you would have never used in your whole life. And the permutation and combination with your breath also is the one in a lifetime experience. Ataha kripaya militva yada aham nimantrayami militva etesham rupani vadantu eva. Bahu ruchiram asti. It's basically that it really is this experience of discovering your human mechanism of sound production. Bahu ruchiram asti. And then bhavishyakale kim bhavati saralataram asti. Rotsyati, rotshyataha, rotsyanti, rotsyasi, rotsyathaha, rotsyatha, rotsyami, rotsyavaha, rotsyamaha. Uttamam. And tatra runadhi ganaha, rudhadi ganaha. Repeat that. Rudhadi ganaha. Kim kim asti tatra? Chid, chinati, chetsyati, to cut. Bhed, to separate, to divide. Bhinati, bhetsyati. So that bhedaha comes from this root. Yuj, to join. Yunakti, yokshati. The word yoga comes from this root here. Astu? Agre gacchama. Tari bhuj dhatoho kim bhavati, to protect in the parasmaipadi. Similar, you can see. So you come to bhunakti. Astu? Tari bhunakti, bhunktaha, bhunjanti. Vadantu militva. Bhunakshi, bhunktaha, bhunktha, bhunajmi, bhunjvaha, bhunjmaha. Astu? Bahu ruchiram punarapi. Anantaram bhavishyakale kim bhavati? Bhokshati, bhokshataha, bhokshanti, bhokshasi, bhokshatha, bhokshatha, bhokshyami, bhokshyavaha, bhokshyamaha iti. And dhatu अन्ये धातवः समाना एव सन्ति. बट एकम् अत्र वाक्यं कुर्मः. So let's do an example. They protect the forest. Kim vadama? So because this is protect the forest, so te vanam, and what is the verb? Bhunjanti. So they protect the forest. Te vanam bhunjanti. They will protect the forest. Te vanam bhokshyanti. So sometimes when you're asked to make a sentence, this is a very easy technique, that you make one simple sentence with one tense and then just make it bahuvachanam, just make it into ekavachanam, just make it. So you will get to apply the verb form in different contexts. Astu? So bhavishyakale te vanam bhokshyanti iti bhavati. Astu? And where do you find this verb bhuj in the sense of to protect? Tell me, can you remember a mantra? Uttamam. Mantra asti, shanti mantra asti tatra. Om sahana vavatu sahanau bhunaktu. So this is where it is coming from. It's this form in the Rudhadi Ganaha that is used in the context of that particular mantra. Astu agre gachama. Let's do this together. So Rudh, to obstruct. So Runadhi Rundhe. And here you have Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. It comes from this root here. So yoga is that practice which helps us to stop the patterns of our thoughts. So Chitta Vritti Nirodha, stoppage of that. Alright? Or the obstructing, the blocking, the closing of those. So Bhuj is Bhunakti, to protect, but as we see that Bhuj is also Bhunkte in the Atmanepadi, it becomes to eat or eats and enjoys. Hins, so hinsa, you can immediately recognize that. So hinasti, to kill or to be violent. Chid, chinatti or chinte, cuts off. Bhanj, which becomes bhanakti, breaks. Bhid, so bhinatti or bhinte, to split. And then you have yuj, yunakti, yunkte, joins. With vinte, performs. Astu? Moving on to the 8th group, Tanadi Ganaha, Ashtama Ganaha asti, introduction to the conjugation of the verbs tan, to extend, to spread, and kr, to do, in the Vartamana Kala and the Bhavishya Kala as always. So, Atra Vayam Tan Dhatoho Rupani Pashyama Parasmai Padyam. Atra Pashyantu Tan Dhatoho Mulataha asti Tanu Vistare, the spreading out. And tatra vikarana pratyaya u iti bhavati. Tari atra pashyama tan u plus tip in that, and that u becomes the o and it becomes tanoti. Tanoti iti rupam bhavati. So militva tanoti, tanutaha, tanvanti, tanoshi, tanuthaha, tanutha, tanomi, tanuvaha or tanvaha, tanumaha or tanmaha iti. So I can just put this there, just a small correction. And then we've got Bhavishyakale kim bhavati tatra. Bhavishyakale tanishyati, tanishyataha, tanishyanti, tanishyanti, tanishyasi, tanishyathaha, tanishyatha, tanishyami, tanishyavaha and tanishyamaha. Uttamam. Tatra tandhatu asti atra. Astu agre pashyama. Kr dhatu etadapi parasmai padyam eva bhavishyati. Etatu vayam adhika parichitaha santi smaha etena saha. Etena saha vayam adhika parichitaha smaha. So you see kr plus u plus tip gatva tat kr tasya kar bhavati and tataha kar plus o plus ti karoti iti bhavati. Abhyasam kurma militva karoti kurutaha kurvanti, karoshi kuruthaha kurutha, karomi kurvaha kurmaha. And atra kim bhavati karishyati, karishyataha, karishyanti, karishyasi, karishyatha, karishyatha, karishyami, karishyavaha, karishyamaha. Astu, tari atra vadantu. The two of you are doing the work well. The two of you are doing the work well. And the you informal. Sorry, yuvam, two of you, doing the work. So work is karyam, doing kurutah. Katham, well, samyak. Yuvam samyak karyam kurutah. Uttamam. Bahuvachane, yuvam samyak karyam karishyatah. Uttamam. And if you want to do that in the ekavachanam, so that was in the bhavishya kalaha, and we want to do it in the ekavachanam from dvivachanam, it will become tvam. Tvam karyam or tvam samyak karyam karoshi. So let's do this, a good example for this. So you work well. Okay, so you work well, you too work well, informal. So yuvam karyam kurutah katham samyak. So yuvam samyak karyam kurutah. Bhavishyakale kim bhavati? Yuvam samyak karyam karishyatah. Uttamam. Ekavachane tvam samyak karyam karishyasi. And what about in the vartamana kale? Tvam samyak karyam karoshi. You see, one sentence permutation and combination, you have some good practice. And what are the other verb forms that we see here? So we've got tan, as we've already seen. Trin, trinoti or tarnishyati. San, sanoti, sanishyati. And we'll see what these verbs mean. So tan, tanoti, tanute spreads kr. Karoti, kurute api asti. Kshanu, or which can also become, if you do it in another form, kshanu is a form that you see there, you can also say kshan. So kshan, kshanoti or kills, a very new verb. We don't normally encounter this. So you see why the 2000 verbs have been reduced to 800, because so many verbs are not part of our vocabulary because we are not using this language so much. Tari mama tu asha asti yad vayam punarapi tavat sanskritam vadishyama tat sarvesham dvisahasra dhatunam punarapi punar upayogaha bhavishyati iti. Astu trin, trinoti, eats. And then that's where you have the verb, the word trinam, or the word for grass, which is trinam. It comes from here. Astu. And man manute, thinks or acknowledges. Van vanute, begs. San sanoti, gives. Iti arthaha asti. So now let's look at the Ashtamaha Gana, or the 8th group, and we're going to be looking at the Tanadi Ganaha. Here we're going to do an introduction of the conjugations to the verbs tan, which is to extend, to spread, and kr, that you're very familiar with, to do. And in the Vartamana Kala, the Lat Lakara, and the Bhavishya Kala, or the Lit Lakara. Tari Prathamam Vayam Tan Dhatoho Rupani Pashyama Parasmai Padyam. Tan Dhatoho Kim Bhavati Tari Tannu Vistare, to spread. Okay, and Tatra U Vikarana Pratyaha Asti. Tari Kim Asti Tatra Tan plus U plus Tip. And by a certain change here of sutras, you will get tan plus o, ukarasya okara bhavati, and that will give us the final form, which is tanoti. Astu. Etadidani militva vadama, tanoti tanutaha tanvanti, tanoshi tanuthaha tanutha, tanomi tanuvaha or tanvaha, and tanumaha or tanmaha. What is the bhavishya kala? Tanishyati, tanishyatah, tanishyanti, tanishyasi, tanishyatah, tanishyatha, tanishyami, tanishyavaha, tanishyamaha. Uttamam. Tari itopi kinchit tatra sahajata asti iti aham vishwasam karomi. Anye ke dhatavah tatra santi, trin dhatoh trinoti tarnishyati iti ekaha artha asti, tatra bhojana iti, in the sense of to eat, and san, sanoti, sanishyati, in the sense of to give. Okay, we see how these roots are roots that we really have stopped using them because sambhashita bhashayam etat sarvam na bhavati. Sanskritam eva bhashita nasti tatha yatha bhavetiti. Kintu asham kurma yat sarvesham milita pratnena punarapi Sanskrita bhashita rupena vishwa bhashita rupena jagrita bhavishyati iti. Okay, so with your help, sincerely hope that we'll be able to revive all those 2000 verbs and see how we can enrich our lives with these different shades of experience and meanings that are there in the Sanskrit verbs. So let's look at the verb kr, to do, in the Parasmaipadi. What do we see here? That it's dukring karane, and u of course is the Vikarana Pratyaya for this group. So dukring karane is a very famous reference of Adi Shankaracharya's Bhaja Govindam, where he says Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate, Samprapte Sannihite Kale Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukring Karane. He uses exactly this form. And in what context? It seems when he was going on the banks of the Ganga or some river, he sees a grammarian, an elderly grammarian, 80-year-old who's still, trying to memorize all the grammar forms and all. And he tells him, he says, that what will liberate you? Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Govindam Bhaja Mudhamate. And then he says, Samprapte Sannihite Kale. Time is nearing, time to go is nearing, and all of that is happening. So now these dukring karane is not going to help you. These grammatical forms are not what is going to help you, but the remembrance of the name of the Lord. And just one other small, I think another dimension to that particular last point is that dukring karane. Karane also means to do, of course. So it could also hint to the fact that constantly engaging in action, in this action and that action is also not that which is going to liberate us, but taking the name of the Lord. In that case, even in action, but the emphasis is on taking the name of the Lord, because remembering that we are the instruments after all, as the Gita really teaches us. So, atra kim bhavati ukarasya, kr plus u, tatra kar bhavati, guna bhavati tatra, puna okarena tatra kar plus o, karoti iti rupam bhavati. Abhyasam kurma, karoti kurutaha kurvanti, karoshi kurutaha kurutha, karomi kurvaha kurmaha. Etad you should be able to, in your deepest sleep, be able to repeat these forms of karoti. Astu. Bhavishya kale, karishyati karishyataha karisyanti, karishyasi karishyathaha karishyatha, karishyami karishyavaha and karishyamaha. Uttamam. Tari ekam vakyam kurma tatra, you two work well. Anuvadam karotu. You two, yuvam. Work, you two do the work. Let me say do the work, that's easier. So, karyam kuruthaha. Well, samyak. Yuvam samyak karyam kuruthaha. What will happen in the Bhavishya Kala? Yuvam samyak karyam karishyathaha. Uttamam. Ekavachanam. Tvam samyak karyam karishyasi. And in the Vartamana Kala? Tvam samyak karyam karoshi. As you can see there. So, kuruthaha, karishyathaha, karishyasi, karoshi. You see the advantage of having this grid-like precision of the conjugations enables the mind to really hold this form in the head. And this is what sharpens the mind, and if this then that, and exactly how to move. And personally, aham anubhutavati. I have experienced that acquiring this mental grid, or these mental grids that Sanskrit offers us in order to understand and use grammar, is a faculty of the mind that is trained, that then helps us to look at even other grammatical structures more systematically. So if you listen to a verb from other languages, if the mind is really trained in this format, then the mind knows exactly where to take it and put it, and then recollect it in a much easier manner. Ataha Sanskritasya training, and I'll also add here that it is not just the Sanskrit training. This is a training that all classical languages really did, especially the classical languages of Europe also, Latin, Greek. So when these languages were taught to our youth in their younger years, it would help to systemize their thinking. Their minds would become systematic, and then they could learn anything with greater ease. So I think in education, we should look at languages not just as, not just as tools of communication, but also as tools to develop the cognitive faculties in themselves. Astu iti ekaha tatra avedanam. In fact, it's a request for us to also think of the role that languages play in formatting our cognitive abilities and our swabhava. The way we look at the world is shaped infinitely. It's shaped to a large extent by the languages we use to express these realities. Militva kurma, tari tan, tanoti or tanute, kr, karoti, kurute. So kshanu was there, but you can also say kshan. kshanoti, which means to kill, trin, trinoti, to eat, and trina, grass coming from there. Man, manute, acknowledges, and manushya, of course, the thinking being from there. Van, vanute, begs. San, sanoti, gives. The other verb, jnya, also in the parasmaipadi. And you can see the same janati eventually. Militva, janati, janitaha, jananti, janasi, janitha, janitha, janami, janivaha, janimaha. Bhavishyakale, jnasyati, and now close your eyes and do the rest of it. Jnasyataha, jnasyanti, jnasyasi, jnasyatha, jnasyatha, jnasyami, jnasyavaha, jnasyamaha. Uttamam. And the other verbs are verbs that we've already seen. Just like to mention that although it is bandh in the root form, in the bhavishya it does become the mahaprana, it becomes bhansyati iti. Astu, ekam atrat vakyam karomi eva. How would you say, I know Sanskrit verbs well? So, I know, janami, Sanskrit verbs, Sanskrita dhatun, because it is the pullinga bahuvachanam karma karaka. And then you have well, samyak, aham, Sanskrita dhatun samyak janami, or just Sanskrita dhatun samyak janami. Now, how would you say, we know the Sanskrit verbs well? Vayam Sanskrita dhatun samyak janimaha. How would you say, I will know, or we will know all the verbs or verb groups well? Vayam sarvan Sanskrita dhatu ganan samyak jnasyamaha. Okay, and I'm sincerely hoping that by the time you complete this course, you would have the full confidence to be able to make a sentence like that. Astu, tarhi etena vishwasena vayam agre gacchamaha. Tarhi militva vadama, kri, krinati, to buy, prinati, to please, or to love also, to like, grah, grahnati, jnya, janati, bandh, badhnati, punati, or punite, punite, and then lunati, lunite, ashnati, pushnati, poshanam. You know, you have that poshanam comes from this root here. Month, so mathnati. So you see there's an interesting reversal there. It's a month, but it becomes mathnati, churns. Samudra manthanam comes from here. Astu, agre gacchama. Final group of verbs, churadi, dashama gana asti, the 10th group, an introduction to the conjugation of the verb, chur, to steal, in the parasmaipadi, again in the vartamana kala, latlakara, and the bhavishya kala, or the litlakara. Tatra kim bhavati? So, chur, steye. So, in the asteya, you remember we did asteya as part of the Ashtanga Yoga, the yamas, so the non-stealing. So, it comes from this chur, which implies steye, in the stealing. Tatra vikarana pratyaya shap eva asti, like we had in the prathama ganaha. But here there is a slight change here. So, you've got chur plus nich. So, what the dashama gana has is this nich form, which means the causative, or you make somebody else to. So, chorayati iti atra rupam bhavati praya. So, chur plus nich plus shap, and that's the whole thing. You see, this is a very long and tedious kind of a intermediate steps that we have here. So, chor. So, you see it becomes chur plus nich shap tip, and then with chutu, it becomes chur plus e. So, a nich, the e remains of that. Shap, the remains, and tip, and then you've got chori and chore with this particular sutra, and then you add on and it becomes choraya with ho yava yavaha, choraya, and so chorai plus plus ti, chorayati iti bhavati. So let's look at the conjugations of this particular verb. So chorayati, chorayatah, chorayanti. So you see ya. Chorayasi, chorayatha, chorayatha, chorayami, chorayavaha, chorayamaha. And this year is something that you need to hold on to, because when you do the Bhavishya Kala, that becomes an important factor, and you say chorayishyati, chorayishyatah, chorayishyanti, chorayishyasi, chorayishyatha, chorayishyatha, chorayishyami, chorayishyava, chorayishyamah. Astu, evam kurvanti chet, it becomes easier to remember the thing. Okay, so how would you say, I will never steal in my life? How would you say that? I will never steal. So, will never steal. So, na kadapi chorayishyami. Kada, and in what context? In my life. Jivane. So, jivane na kadapi chorayishyami. That's a vrata that is expected, or a vow that's expected from us, according to the Yoga Sutras, because they say that that's the yama, is the first entry even to be doing asanas and pranayama and anything else, and especially in order to attain samadhi. Ataha etad bahu mukhyam atra mukhyah prayogaha bhavati atra. And let's look at some accompanying verbs in this particular group. You've got kat, kathayati, like we've been hearing in the conversations. Kathaya piyusha, kim chintayasi. So coming from there, kathayishyati, and the word katha coming from there. Kshal, kshalayati, kshalayishyati. Prakshalayati is when you add a prefix or upasarga to it. Chintayati, so chintayati and chintayishyati. Such in form, suchayati or suchayishyati. Pathayati and pathayishyati. You see where the niche comes into play there. So because you're teaching somebody else here. Okay. So some verbs, let's say together. Chur, chorayati, chintayati, bhakshayati. But it's not eating oneself. It is you're feeding somebody else. Then you say bhakshayati. So it's a niche. Puj, pujayati, to worship or worships. Arthayati, makes sense or begs. And you have such, suchayati, informs. So there are many verbs in this category, but we just kept to a few here. And the Piyushasya atra mahan prayatna asi to try and bring together at least 100 verbs. Astu tari abhyasasya uttamah avasarah atra yushmakam bhavishyati. So I try to do this format of presentation where you've got the verbs and you've got the respective vikarana pratyayas that are given here. So see if you can just look at that and identify the verbs that might be associated with them. If you can recollect, just pausing on this slide. Sambhashanam Piyushena saha. Namaste Piyusha.
Pranamah Arye.
Sarvam kushalam kim?
Sarvam kushalam Arye.
Gatavarge asmabhihi dhatunam panchaganaha drishtaha. Asmin varge vayam avashishta gananam upari kridam kurma.
Atrapi dhatu quiz, dhatu parichaya krida bhavishyati va?
Pashyamaha. Tvametan dhatun parichinoshi vanava iti.
Avashyam. Gatavare krida bahuruchira asit. Ahamapi ativotsukosmi. Ativa utsukah asmi. Vadatu Arye.
Ati sahajamekam pritchami. Chorayati iti कीदृशः धातु अस्ति?
सा चुरादिः.
भवन्तः अपि प्रयत्नं कुर्वन्तु. यदा पीयूषः लिखति तदा भवन्तः अपि पुनः प्रयत्नं कुर्वन्तु.
चुरादि. चुरादि और विसर्गस्य लोपः भवितुं शक्यते. एषः दशमे गणे और दशम गणे उभयपदी धातुरस्ति. अत्र स्वार्थे नीच भवति.
सम्यक् अवदस्त्वम्. इदानीं कथय. मिलति धातुः कस्मिन् गणे विद्यते?
आर्ये सः किं तुदादि. तुदादिः और तुदादि गणे अस्ति इति षष्ठे गणे. षष्ठे और षष्ठ गणे वर्तते. स्मरणीयः विषयः अस्ति यत् एषः उभयपदी धातुः अस्ति. तयोः भेदः अस्ति यत् यदा मेलनम् अन्यस्य प्रयोजनाय भवति तदा परस्मैपद्याः उपयोगः भवति किन्तु यदा मेलनकर्तुः प्रयोजनार्थं भवति तदा आत्मनेपद्यां रूपाणि वर्तन्ते धातुरूपं भवति
उत्तमं महान् सन्तोषः त्वम् उत्तीर्णः पास्ट् धन्यवादः
अस्तु आर्ये ममापि आनन्दः जातः अनया क्रीडया धन्यवादः शुभदिनम् आर्ये
Sincerely hope you enjoyed the conversation with Piyush and that you were also able to guess which group and the number of the group that particular verb belonged to. And now let's move on to the final part of our lecture, which is looking at the values that are required in order to nurture dharma in our lives. Tari militva vadama Kshama satyam dama shaucham danamindriya sanyamaha ahimsa guru shushrusha tirthanusaranam daya arjavam lobha shunyatvam deva brahmana pujanam anabhyasuya cha tatha dharma samanya uchyate iti. What I would like you also to appreciate at this stage is that now when you're saying these words, especially we've come up to Guru Shushusha, I sincerely hope that every time you're talking of these verbs or these words, you are recollecting that all the implications that they have. So that is what is very important. And we try and see if we can build a value tree around these ideas. So, a quick overview of the understanding of Guru Shushusha, Guru plus Shushusha. Etymological meaning of Guru Shushusha asti Gurunam Shushusha, Guru Shushusha iti Shashti Tatpurusha Samasa asti. Punaha tatra Guru Shabdasya Vyutpattim Pashyamaschit Grinati Upadishati Vedadi Shastrani Indradi Devebhya iti Guruhu Giryate Stuyate Deva Gandharva Manushyadibhi iti Guruhu. Punaha Anyaha tatra Vyutpattirasti. Puna Shushusha Padasya Yadi Vayam Vyutpattim Pashyama Shrotum Ichha Shu plus Shru plus San Utaha Sanantaha Pratyaya Tatra Yojitaha plus A iti Srilinga Nirdeshanartham Tatra Shushusha iti Bhavati Tasya Arthaha Bhavati Seva Athva Upasanam Shrotum Ichha iti Tasya Kaha Shlokaha asti Gabhirartha Bodhanartham Shushrusha Shravananchaiva Grahanam Dharanam Tatha Uho Puhortha Vijnanam Tattva Jnanancha Dhi Gunaha. Astu, important one here because Shushrusha implies those cognitive abilities that involve listening, grasping and retaining and the knowledge to engage in debate and discussion on fundamental knowledge systems, Tattva Jnanam, and which is in the line of the first principle thinkings. And these are all the cognitive abilities or the Dhi Gunaha. Now, let's look at some different types of Guravas in our lives as talked about by the Shastras. Tari father as a Guruhu. Tatra vadanti nishekadini karmani yah karoti yatha vidhi sambhavayati channena sa vipro guru ruchyate. So, what is it said here? He says, Nishekadini karmani. Nisheka is when there is an insemination really that is taking place. So karmani yah karoti yatha vidhi. As prescribed, the person is doing it. Sambhavayati and also helps to give birth because of that. Cha anena, by this action of nishekadanam. I'll just say that again. I'll say the whole thing again. So, who are the different gurus in our lives according to the Shastras? So, the first one is the father as a Guruhu, and the shloka that says why is can be found in the Manusmriti, where he says that Nishekadini karmani yah karoti. Remember the Jifa Mulya Sandhi there. Yah karoti yatha vidhi sambhavayati channena sa vipro guru ruchyate. Just would like to mention that in the text, in the older text, you find a lot of these doubling of letters, which is not there so much in the classical Sanskrit that follows. Astu. And so what is it? Nishekadini. So this is the work of insemination really. And I said the one who facilitates procreation. So, Nishekadini karmani yah karoti yatha vidhi, in the prescribed manner. Sambhavayati cha anena. Okay, so this helps to give birth in this process. Sa vipraha guru ruchyate, and this is called the guru by the Vipras also. Okay. And then what do we have here? The Tikakaras are saying. So we've got some of them like Medhatithihi, or we've got Sarvajna Narayanaha. So Kullukaha Raghavanandaha te vadanti Guru Shabdena Pita Bodhyaha te vadanti Nishekadini Nama Sarvani Sanskarani. Because it says Adi. So Nishekadini, that Dini, Adini implies all the other samskaras, samskara kriyas that you have to do. Raghavanandaha vadati Vipra Padam Upalakshanam Samskarasya Dvijati Matra Niyatatvat. Okay, so by Vipra is meant, so Sa Vipra is not so much the Guru is called by the learned, but that person is himself a Dvija there. Okay, because of the word Vipra, that is the wise one. Okay, Dvijatiya really implied one who was initiated into the higher aspects of life. That is as much as it really implies. And then Atra Gurupadena Shikshakaha na bodhyate. Yataha kimartham Shikshakaha nasti. Yataha purvasmin shlokadvaye manuna acharyaha tatha upadhyaya iti padadvayam dvividha shikshakayoho krite prayuktam. So he's already referred to Guru in the terms of Acharya and Upadhyaya in another 2 shlokas prior to this. And plus the work of Nishekadini. This is a very specific task of the father, who is the Vipra and also the Guru in this context. Who are the others? So you've got a mother as a Guru. So Nasti Pitra Samo Devo, Nasti Matra Samo Guruhu, Tayoho Pratyupakaropi na Kathanchana Vidyate. So what are they saying? Nasti Pitra Samo Devo. So Nasti Pitra Samaha Devaha. There's no Godhead who is equal to the father. Nasti Matra Samo Guruhu. There is no Guruhu who is as much to be revered as the mother. Tayoho pratyupakaropi na kathanchana vidyate. Prati upakara, returning the debt that one has to them, can never be done by anybody. So no matter what one does, in fact, na kathanchidapi, or so na kathanchana vidyate. You can no way repay that debt that we have for their having given us birth on earth. So Guru Vargaha and the relatives who all are there. Upadhyayah pita jeshtha bhrata chaiva mahipatihi matulaha shvashura strata mata mahi pita mahau bandhur jeshtha pitrivyascha punsyete guravah smritaha. I'll pause there because these are all the male gurus. Who are all the male gurus? The teacher, the father, the elder brother and the king, maternal uncle, father-in-law, maternal and paternal grandfathers, the elder, friend, paternal uncle. These are considered to be the male gurus. And there's a lot to think about them. We'll possibly come to it a little later on. Then of the female gurus who all are there, it says Mata Mahi Matulani Tatha Matushchasodaraha Shvashruhu Pitamahi Jeshtha Dhatri Cha Guravas Trishu Ityukto Guru Vargoyam Matritaha Pitrito Dvijaha. So there's just a small typo there. So it's not ba there, but it's a vakara. Astu. So who are in the ladies' side, who are the gurus in our relatives? So he says the maternal grandmother, wife of the maternal uncle, maternal aunts, mother-in-law, paternal grandfather, paternal grandmother. And the elder foster mother, and then these are the female gurus. Thus the wise identify the group of gurus from the maternal and paternal sides. So we see that the word guru in this context is really referred to as people we learn from, the people who nurture us, who are interested in our well-being, and they are teaching and nurturing us. So that is really meant. And if there is no Shraddha from our side, if that idea of respect is not there, then we can possibly not learn from their experience. All these people they've enumerated are people who are older than the person generally, and therefore the scope of learning from their lived experiences. That is the implications of this. Okay. What is the definition of the mantra guruhu? Gakarah siddhidah prokto repah papasya harakah ukaro vishnuravyaktah tritayatma guruh paraha. What is it saying? The letter G gives realizations while R removes sin. U is the unmanifest form of Vishnu. These are the three highest forms of the Guru's essence. Astu? And then what are the qualities that such a person should have? So, Shanto, Dantah, Kulinascha, Vinita, Shuddha, Veshavan, Shuddhachara, Supratishthah, Shuchir, Daksha, Subuddhiman. So, calm, performing austerities, from a good family, Kulinaha, humble, well dressed, rightly behaved. Okay, so the Shuddhachara, well established, pure, skillful, and very intelligent. Next, Ashrami Dhyana Nishthascha Mantra Tantra Visharadaha Nigrahana Nugrahe Shaktaha or Shakto Gururityabhidhiyate, saying capable of special self-control. So, sorry, before that, who lives in the ashram? Ashrami, diligent meditator, Dhyana Nishthascha, expert in mantra and tantra, Mantra Tantra Visharadaha, and then capable of special self-control, of withdrawing and letting go. So, Nigrahanugrahe Shaktaha, one who is capable of this letting go and controlling. So, such a person is a Guruhu. Okay, and the final part, Uddhartum Chaiva Sanhartum Samartho Brahmanottamaha Tapasvi Satyavadi Cha Grihastho Guru Ruchyate. So, these are very important qualities. He says capable of rescuing from and removing of obstacles. Uddhartum can pull us out of difficulties. The mantra Guruhu, that's why. And Sanhartum Samarthaha, to remove all obstacles. Brahmanottamaha. Brahmana here is one who knows about the Brahman, one who knows the essential truths, not just someone who is born in a Brahmana kula. Okay, and then he says tapasvi, one who has tapasya, shakti in them. Satyavadi, because the ability of saying the truth requires a lot of integrity. Cha grihastha, very interesting that they add he has to be a family person, because such a person also understands difficulties of the ordinary people in general. Guru Ruchyate. So let's look at some advice that is given regarding the Guru Shushusha. So what are they saying? Anuvartanametesham mano vakkaya karmabhihi Gurum drishtva samuttishtet abhivadya kritanjalihi naitair upavishet sardham vivadet natmakaranat jivitartham api dveshat gurubhinnapabhashanam uditopi gunair anyair gurudveshi patatyadha. So I've sort of done a little bit of a sandhi vicheda as I was reading, but in short it says anuvartanametesham. Okay, so what is he saying? Following them, these gurus, through actions of mind, body and speech. Manova kaya karmabhihi. One must stand on seeing the Guru. Gurum drishtva samuttishtet, with greetings and with folded hands. Abhivadya kritanjalihi. Na etair upavishet sardham. So one should not sit on a common platform. Or vivadet atma karanat, or speak about oneself, or about just keep speaking from one's own perspective. Basically to have shushusha, to be ready to listen rather to want to go on speaking. Jivitartham api dveshat gurubhinnapabhashanam. So what he says that even for one's living or survival, to speak ill of the Guru, uditah api gunair anyair gurudveshi patatyadha. So even if there is a situation which has brought forth the negative qualities of a Guru, one who becomes a Guru Dveshi or an anti-Guru or against their own master, someone who has given them knowledge and education, is one who will be doomed, or patatyadha is what this verse basically says in the Shabda Kalpadrumaha. Astu, long and short of it, it's not that the Guru was infallible. The way I understand it is because it is meant for the disciple. The attitudes that are meant in the disciple of humility, of being able to control one's speech, all these qualities were required in order to have the optimum benefit of the learning itself. Astu, so if the student and the student thinks that they're equal to the guru when it comes to learning, it's like two vessels are in the same level. You cannot pour one into the other. So if one has to be a learner, one has to have the humility to be a little lower so that something can be poured into one's vessel. Iti karanat, these kinds of practices and disciplines were prescribed for the Guru Shushrusha. And 5 most important gurus in our lives. So we've got Gurunan Chaiva Sarvesham Pujyaha Pancha Visheshataha Tesham Adhyastrayah Shreshthas Tesham Mata Supujita Yo Bhavayati Yasute Yena Vidyopadishyate Jyeshtha Bhrata Cha Bharta Cha Panchaite Guravah Smritaha. Who are these 5 gurus in our lives? So Gurunan Chaiva Sarvesham, of all the gurus, Pujyaha Pancha Visheshata, 5 main ones. Tesham Adhyastrayah Shreshtaha. The first 3 are the most important ones. Even within those, Mata Supujita. So there is the mother, our mother is kept as the guru, the person that we learn from. Where does that learning start? Right in the womb itself. So we learn a lot of things from the mother, and that is where there is a need for education during maternity itself, because the mother is imparting values, the mother is imparting preferences, the mother is imparting discipline already when the child is in the womb of the mother. And then Yo Bhavayati, so one who helps give birth, the father. Ya Sute, the mother who gives the birth. Yena Vidyopadishyate, so the teacher who instructs, gives us new birth into life and allows us to become familiar with the world around us. That's the next important step. Then Jyeshtha Bhrata, because the elder brother wants to protect you and has a little more experience, that's why Jyeshtha Bhrata. Bharta Cha, so the husband also is regarded as a guru. And we were thinking about, with Piyush we were discussing and Chintayamasma that Kimartham Tatra Patyuhu Etadrisha Guru Sthanam, which somehow continues in our culture even today. And whether in modern times something like that is worth it or you need to question it are things that we need to discuss as a culture, as a people. And I think one of the reasons why the Bharta was also regarded as a guru is often they were older to start with, then they were the ones who were going out into the world and dealing with the world. While the woman often was in the house and she was, not that she was uneducated, but she was looking into the world of the family and the closer societies. So it was the husband who had the experience, the outer worldly experience to guide the wife. And in that context, also because the older factor was there, so more experience from that perspective. But whether that is equally valid today, to what extent is it valid? These are all questions that one needs to ask in our opinion here. Astu, tari prashnan prichhama kala, desha kala, patranusaram tasya uttaram api praptum prayatnah karaniyah. Not just because etad kathitam asti, this has been said, we have to wholesale apply. None of these texts were meant for all times. They are all smriti shastras, which means that they were meant for a time, a place and a person at a particular thing. So one needs to question and see what is valid, what is invalid, and then act with that wisdom, that viveka shakti mukhya asit. Tari etadekam bahu mukhyam antevasibhyah anushasanam asit in the Taittiriya Upanishad Shikshavali Ekadashonuvakaha. I'll try and read out the whole thing for you. So, Vedam anuchyacharyo antevasinam anushasti satyam vada dharmam chara swadhyayan ma pramadaha acharyaya priyam dhanam ahritya prajatantum ma vyavacchetsihi satyan na pramaditavyam dharman na pramaditavyam kushalan na pramaditavyam bhutyai na pramaditavyam swadhyaya pravachanabhyam na pravaditavyam deva pitrikaryabhyam na pramaditavyam matridevo bhava pitridevo bhava acharya devo bhava atithi devo bhava yanyanavadadyani karmani. I'll say that again. Yanyavadyani karmani. Okay, last time. Yanyavadyani karmani tani sevitavyani no itarani yanyasmakam sucharitani tani tvayopasyani. तानि त्वयोपास्यानि नो इतराणि ये के चास्मच्छ्रेयांसो ब्राह्मणाः तेषां त्वयासनेन प्रश्वसितव्यम् तेषां त्वयासनेन प्रश्वसितव्यं श्रद्धया देयम् अश्रद्धया अदेयं श्रिया देयं ह्रिया देयं भिया देयं संविदा देयम् अथ यदि ते कर्म विचिकित्सा वा वृत्तिविचिकित्सा वा स्यात् ये तत्र ब्राह्मणा सम्मर्शिनः युक्ताः अयुक्ताः अलूक्षाः धर्मकामाः स्युः यथा ते तत्र वर्तेरन् तथा तत्र वर्थेथाः अथाभ्याव्याख्यातेषु once more अथाभ्याव्याख्यातेषु ये तत्र ब्राह्मणा सम्मर्शिनः युक्ता अयुक्ताः अलूक्षा धर्मकामाः स्युः यथा ते तेषु वर्तेरन् तथा तेषु वर्तेथाः एष आदेशः एष उपदेशः एषा वेदोपनिषत् एतद् अनुशासनम् एवम् उपासितव्यम् एवमु चैतद् उपास्यम्. Okay, and this is, as we've said, from the Taittiriya Upanishad. It's the Shikshavali and the Ekadasho Nuvakaha. This Antevasi was the brahmachari who had gone to the Guru to stay with the Guru and learn for a certain period of time. So this was the advice given on graduation, in fact, to the brahmachari. And let's listen to the translation in English, where he says, when the master hath declared Veda, then he giveth the commandments to his disciple. Speak truth, walk in the way of thy duty, neglect not the study of Veda. When thou hast brought to the master the wealth that he desireth, thou shalt not cut short the long thread of thy race. Thou shalt not be negligent of truth. Thou shalt not be negligent of thy duty. Thou shalt not be negligent of welfare. Thou shalt not be negligent towards thy increase and thy thriving. Thou shalt not be negligent of the duty of the study and teaching of Veda. Thou shalt not be negligent of thy works unto the gods or thy works unto the fathers. Let thy father be unto thee as thy God, and thy mother as thy goddess, whom thou adorest. Serve the master as a god, and as a god the stranger within thy dwelling. The works that are without blame before the people, thou shalt do these with diligence and no others. The deeds we have done that are good and righteous, thou shalt practice these as a religion and no other. Whosoever are better and nobler than we among the Brahmins, thou shalt refresh with a seat to honor them. Thou shalt give with faith and reverence. Without faith thou shalt not give. So this is Shraddhaya Deyam, Shraddhaya Adeyam. Thou shalt give with shame, Hriya Deyam. Here it's not shame, it's that humility kind of a thing more. Thou shalt give with fear, Bhya Deyam. Thou shalt give with fellow feeling, Samvida Deyam. And then he says, moreover, if thou doubt of thy course of thy action, then whatsoever Brahmins be there who are careful thinkers, devout, not moved by others, lovers of virtue, not severe or cruel, as even they do in that thing, so do thou. Then as to men accused and arranged by their fellows, whatsoever Brahmins be there who are careful thinkers, devout, not moved by others, lovers of virtue, not severe or cruel, even as they are towards these, so be thou. This is the law and the teaching. These are the commandments. In such wise shall thou practice religion. Yea, verily, in such wise do ever religiously. But I'd like to just mention that the term religion is not the strict Hindu religion or the Christian religion, etc. Atra, it is just that this is the Vedopanishad. This is that wisdom. This is that knowledge. And this is the teaching that eternal wisdom is trying to instruct to us. Astu. So this is a translation by Sri Aurobindo here, but this is, as you can see, very archaic in its English. It's a very old form of English. But most important thing to remember here is that as the individual is leaving and prepared to go to the world, this experience of Guru Shushruksha, the sense of humility and the sense of focus and the sense of learning from those who are worthy models. The Brahmana Shabda here is not again the Jati Brahmana, but it's referring to those people of noble quality who are truth seekers, who are stable in their experience. So such people should be observed. How do they behave in the workplace? How do they behave in different societal contexts? And such behavior is to be emulated. And this is the commandment, as they say, but this is also the suggestion and the advice to follow for the young graduate as they enter into the world outside. To conclude, Swami Vivekananda says of discipleship, he says, "My dearest and nearest relative in life is my Guru, next my mother, then my father. My first reverence is to the Guru. If my father says do this and my Guru says do not do this, I do not do it. The Guru frees my soul. The father and mother give me this body, but the Guru gives me rebirth in the soul." And then in another letter to V. Guptaji, he says, "Everyone can play the role of a master, but it is very difficult to be a servant. Know it for certain that without steady devotion to the Guru and unflinching patience and perseverance, nothing is to be achieved." Some references here, including the one at the end, which has the Upanishads. So, a lot to know here. You've now been familiarized with the 10 ganas. Dasha gananam dhatu gananam parichaya abhavat, abhyasasya api avasarah abhavat. अतः कृपया सावधानतया अभ्यासं कुर्वन्तु, अधिकम् अभ्यासं कुर्वन्तु, तेन भाषायाः अपि सम्भाषणे भवतां रुचिर्भविष्यति, सहजता च भविष्यति इत्युक्त्वा नमस्ते।